What's great about the Final Fantasy games is that everyone is distinct. While part of an overarching series, each game has its own setting, characters, and gameplay. That's why fans all have their favourites, and that's why Final Fantasy XVI is proving so divisive. With this latest game in the series, Square Enix is continuing its legacy of experimentation and boldly pushing the boundaries of what it really means to be a Final Fantasy game. Gone are the turn-based party battles in favour of action combat controlling a single character with linear character progression. Yet what remains is thoroughly Final Fantasy. A compelling, epic narrative, an inventive battle system, a sprawling, beautiful world with Chocobo, Moogle and familiar summons, and a big dollop of melodrama.
To the gates! Quickly! Move!
What do you mean, you refuse?
In a bid to appeal to a broader, global audience, Creative Business Unit 3, the Square Enix team behind critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV, has taken its cue from Game of Thrones. The inspiration is absolutely clear, from its grim medieval Europe setting and mature violent tone to specific character parallels that cherry-pick liberally from George R.R. Martin's book series. Initially, at least, this is a world away from the high fantasy and sci-fi worlds of previous Final Fantasy games. This is a more grounded take on Final Fantasy staples. The world of Valisthea is split into regions, each with its own mother crystal that imbues a once-in-a-generation dominant with the blessing, or curse depending on your outlook, of summoning an elemental being called an icon. How each region deals with its dominant, as well as magic users called bearers, who are almost universally treated as slaves, does drive the story. If it's all a little too much to remember, you can always use the active time lore feature, which is essentially Amazon Prime's X-Ray, to keep track of characters, places, and themes, a feature that frankly every game deserves. What really impresses me though is the sense of scale. With expert pacing, the plot crescendos from intimate character moments through escalating battles towards these climactic, world-shaking icon versus icon clashes. Each one takes on a new genre, from wrestling matches to shoot-em-ups, and provides Final Fantasy XVI with its most standout moments. Some are overly scripted, but they're mostly a moment of cinematic relief. Your reward, let's say, for a battle well fought. The icon battles put the PlayStation 5 to work, though it's the smaller character moments that are most memorable. The tiny nuances of human expression are impeccable. The voice acting is also the best the series has ever seen, in particular Ben Starr's brooding, yet relatable Clive. Beyond the fantastical kaiju-style battles and the heroic score from Masayoshi Soken, Final Fantasy XVI offers a thoroughly human story of tragedy and inclusion. Combat really sings in Final Fantasy XVI. Combat director Ryota Suzuki, fresh from his previous work on Devil May Cry 5, has created a fast and fluid real-time battle system that satisfies with its volley of spells, sword swipes and iconic abilities. It's Devil May Clive, if you will. Landing last-minute precision dodges before unleashing a barrage of vibrant magical attacks looks as impressive as it feels. The ability to equip and respec Clive with varying suites of abilities gives players the option to change up their strategies, even if combat on the whole is never particularly difficult. And some abilities only come into play during the extra difficulty of Final Fantasy mode during that New Game Plus.
Do the territories fare any better?
With all its experimentation, Final Fantasy XVI does have a number of small caveats that hamper enjoyment and prevent it from reaching the very best of the series. Caveats that become more apparent the longer you play. Though it begins with political intrigue, the plot eventually meanders into overblown fantasy. But then doesn't every game in the series? More so, quest design becomes tedious in the latter half with generic fetch quests akin to Final Fantasy XIV. And, like that game, there's not always enough to do in its vast and beautiful environments that often act simply as set dressing, even if extra side quests do eventually pad out the world. It's a gorgeous world too, but some secondary scenes do look robotic by comparison, with performance mode stuttering a little in crowded areas. Some series fans may also criticise the lack of RPG customization, as Clive's progression through crafting is all too linear, and a lack of enemy variety means strategizing with his myriad abilities isn't really necessary.
You really are quite the outlaw.
While the game's story centres on inclusion, not everybody is included. Producer Naoki Yoshida previously commented about the game's lack of black characters, stating in an interview, "We simply want the focus to be less on the outward appearance of our characters and more on who they are as people," while also citing the influence of medieval Europe. The theme of slavery is prevalent through Final Fantasy XVI, with some unsubtle side quests in particular approaching the topic with a heavy hand, and it is uncomfortable to play through the story and its parallels to real history without the presence of black characters. Moreover, there are some darker-skinned characters present, but they're stereotyped wearing turbans and working in a desert bazaar. On the plus side, the game does feature landmark LGBT plus representation, for which Square Enix absolutely deserves to be praised. It's handled sensitively and with compassion. In the grand scheme of things, any caveats are minor blips when the game as a whole is stunning. For some players, these caveats won't be an issue at all, especially those with experience of Final Fantasy XIV and a higher tolerance to fetch quests. For others, the lack of tradition may be a deal breaker. Yet, Square Enix's willingness to broaden the appeal of its flagship franchise is exciting, resulting in this spectacular cinematic action game. It may not be for everyone, but when its high points are so euphoric, it's hard not to fall in love with Clive and his iconic adventures. If you've played Final Fantasy XVI, let us know in the comments what you thought of it. And if you enjoyed this review and want to be the first to know when we post future reviews and previews, as well as everything else Swap and Joysticks related, make sure you subscribe and click the bell for alerts.